They called it a joint peacekeeping mission. 30 ships, 14 species, one goal: to secure the ruins of a derelict structure orbiting a dead sun. The scans were clear. No signs of life, no radiation anomalies, no known traps. But within 3 minutes of docking, the screaming began. Humans had been part of galactic missions for barely 30 years. Even then, they were rarely given command roles. Too volatile, they said, too emotional. That's why Captain Lyra Maddox, one of Earth's finest, was stationed far from the core of the fleet, on a support vessel, logistics only. She wasn't supposed to matter. Her ship didn't get boarded first. It didn't even get boarded second. But when the slaughter reached her deck, she already knew what was happening. The footage was coming through open channels. Elvari crew being pulled limb from limb by invisible claws, the silence broken only by the hiss of static and the wet crunch of flesh. No one ever saw the enemy. Not directly. She sealed the bulkhead and activated emergency purge, knowing it would vent 27 crewmates into space. That's when the screaming stopped, on her ship, anyway. The rest of the fleet kept transmitting for another 32 minutes. Then it all went dark. When the rescue drones arrived 72 hours later, they found only one life form in stasis. One ship remained functional, partially repaired from the inside with makeshift grafts. Human tools spliced into alien systems. It should have been impossible. No AI, no support crew, just her. Her debrief was classified. The footage never made it past Level 9 clearance. But whispers spread about the look in her eyes, about the things she refused to say. The Galactic Council's questions went unanswered. All she said was, "It wasn't a weapon, it was a warning, and you ignored it." They tried to bury it. They assigned her to a desk. Protocol. But Maddox didn't return to Earth. Instead, she stole the wreckage of her ship, disabled the AI lockout, and disappeared into unregulated space. No one noticed until 3 outposts in the Nix cluster went silent. The first station was found with no signs of struggle. Food still warm on trays. Showers running. Lights on. No bodies. Just one word carved into the control console, scorched deep into the metal with plasma. Observe. The second had bodies. All aliens. No humans. Kill with precision, not rage. No weapons used. Each target had been leaders in Black Ops missions. Names erased from official records. Their files were found copied and uploaded to every major network in the Council. Secrets laid bare. Assassinations. Slave raids. False flag attacks. For the first time in centuries, people remembered why humanity had been kept on the edge of the map. Then came the last station. This time, a survivor. Half mad, clinging to a reactor core like it could save him. When pulled out, he screamed just one word over and over. She watched. The Council convened a crisis summit. They labeled her a rogue actor, disavowed all knowledge, declared her a galactic threat. An Elvari diplomat asked the question everyone was thinking. If one human can do this alone, what happens if more follow? She didn't send threats. She sent truth. The kind that couldn't be unlearned. Secret colonies built on exterminated worlds. Bio-experiments conducted on living prisoners. Treaties broken before the ink dried. She had everything, and she released it in stages. Each data dropped more explosive than the last. Empires crumbled overnight, not because of violence, but because of exposure. Maddox didn't need to kill them. She let them destroy themselves. But when the mercenaries came, hired by those who had the most to lose, they learned something different, that she wasn't done with war, that she hadn't just survived the attack on the peacekeeping fleet. She had learned from it, studied the unknown enemy, and adapted. She began modifying herself, biologically, technologically. She fused human combat instincts with alien enhancements, violating every known protocol. Her neural latency dropped by half. Her reaction times doubled. She stopped using weapons. She didn't need them. One team of 15 elite killers tracked her to a moon base outside Council control. They had the best gear. Stealth suits. Tracking AI. They lasted 93 seconds. Her message to the Council came through minutes later. You kept humanity weak because you feared what we might become. You were right. Fleet Admiral Voss demanded retaliation. His armada of 60 ships entered unclaimed space to hunt her down. Only one came back, manned by a single corpse, strapped to the pilot chair with her name carved into his chest. No blood, just the words, "You sent them, I returned them." A 1,000-year-old species known as the Vosari contacted Earth privately, not to threaten, but to ask a question. "What else have you hidden?" Earth's reply was simple. "She acts alone, but we understand." That's when the shift happened. Empires stopped thinking of humans as unpredictable. They began calling them something else. Strategic anomalies, chaos vectors, apex disruptors. They feared what Maddox might still unleash. They feared what else might be sleeping on Earth. She didn't build an army. She didn't need one. Her mind was faster than strategy AI. Her presence alone destabilized systems. The simple knowledge that she was out there, alive, watching, punishing, altered galactic behavior. Smuggling rings collapsed. War profiteers went underground. Treaties got enforced. Out of fear, they thought death would stop her. But she never aimed for survival. She aimed for impact. The last known footage showed her walking into an abandoned relay station, once controlled by the Zira Combine. 3 ships waited outside. They didn't fire. They waited. Hours passed. Then a signal lit up across 5 sectors. A silent glyph. Not a name. Not a threat. A symbol. Half human, half alien. Surrounded by fire. She didn't return from the station. But that didn't matter. Her myth had already grown too large. Now, every time a corrupt leader disappears, they whisper her name. Every time an AI refuses to obey unethical commands, they cite the Maddox Protocol. In trying to suppress one human, they elevated her into legend. And in doing so, they reminded the galaxy of a truth it had forgotten. Humanity doesn't start wars. But when we finish them, no one forgets. There was no trace of Lyra Maddox in any system. Her biometric ID was purged from Earth's central registry. Surveillance AIs flagged anomalies but couldn't lock location. What they found instead were patterns, predictable breakdowns in core infrastructure wherever galactic elites tried to regroup. 7 banking planets lost quantum encryption within 48 hours. Their backups were untouched, but their contents were exposed. Off-the-record war funds, bribery chains, names. The press didn't release them. Maddox did. On free-wave networks, untraceable and multilingual. Fleet commanders began resigning without explanation. Trade alliances disbanded under internal mutiny. She didn't attack militaries. She destabilized supply chains. She didn't need lasers. She used truth, precision, and timing. The galaxy wanted to believe it was coincidence. But then she returned to the ruins where it all started. She didn't go alone. 3 ancient derelicts, once believed unsalvageable, lit up under her control. Systems dead for millennia suddenly powered on. Experts said it was impossible. Tech from lost civilizations. No one understood how she cracked them. But the fact remained. She did. 1 ship vanished entirely, activating a slipstream drive no living race could replicate. The second began orbiting a dead world known only to the Vosari. The third? She weaponized it. It didn't fire guns. It broadcast a signal, low frequency, subharmonic, designed to trigger buried trauma in AI systems. 6 planets saw their entire automation networks collapse. Civilian cities shut down. Farming colonies blacked out. Autonomous drones self-terminated in midair. It was surgical chaos. Not a single death attributed directly to her, but billions affected indirectly. Enough for the Galactic Council to raise emergency protocols across 3 quadrants. That's when humans back on Earth started getting strange offers. Invitations, bribes, threats. Aliens once dismissive of Earth's influence now demanded to know what made Maddox different. Why did Earth produce someone like her? And were there more? Earth's response was silence. But internally, they were watching, too. Not with fear, but curiosity. And then respect. Because she had done something no admiral, no ambassador, no AI had ever achieved. She made the entire galaxy behave. She leaked operation details about the Ealer Dominion's chemical sterilization programs. Overnight, 20 systems seceded. When the Ealer tried to retaliate, their fleet malfunctioned. Not destroyed, repurposed. Their command codes rewritten. Their ships flew themselves into sun orbits and shut down. She sent one message: your crimes do not expire. A known warlord in the Frothed Expanse issued a bounty, 10 billion credits for her head. For assassins answered. None returned. What came instead was a live feed 60 seconds long. No violence. Just Maddox, unarmed, standing in a field of snow, staring into the camera. No sound, just her eyes. And the symbol behind her, that glyph now burned into collective memory. By now, entire religions had formed in her shadow. On fringe worlds, she was called the Catalyst, the Rebalancer, the Flesh and Code Warden. Children were named after her. Resistance groups, long ignored or crushed, rose with renewed fury under her symbol. She did not claim leadership. She did not give orders. But she became their axis. The Vozari, seeking to understand her deeper, sent a thought empath to contact her across the quantum net. He returned barely, saying, "She's not angry. She's focused. And she won't stop until justice is no longer a variable, but a constant." Her implants evolved, not with alien tech, but her own designs, a hybrid of Terra neurofeedback and zero-point quantum processors. She surpassed the limits of tactical cognition. A single glance gave her full situational breakdowns. A single breath calibrated her body to different gravitational environments. She became post-biological in function, but remained entirely human in choice. A council diplomat, cornered by a reporter, said, "You don't understand. She isn't fighting for Earth. She's fighting for a standard of truth the galaxy forgot. That's why we're afraid. Because she reminds us of what we tolerated. When the Veari species initiated a planetary purge to remove suspected Maddox sympathizers, the retaliation wasn't physical. Their language, spoken for 14,000 years, was erased from every archive within 6 hours. No translation software recognized it. Their culture, their art became mute. The next generation couldn't read their own history. All she sent was a file. Memory is sacred. You made it a weapon. I made it ash. Across the sectors, galactic powers raced to adapt. Some opened negotiations with Earth, begging for assurance that Maddox would be restrained. Others began copying her methods, hiring human mercenaries, studying her data leaks, trying to replicate her control over AI. None succeeded, because it wasn't just her tech. It was her philosophy. She didn't destroy the galaxy. She showed it a mirror. Pirate factions stopped targeting civilian freighters, not out of mercy, but terror. Smugglers began vetting cargo for ethical sourcing. Even black markets adopted code of conduct frameworks, not by law, but by survival instinct. What terrified the galaxy wasn't what she did. It was what they might deserve, because she didn't choose targets at random. Her strikes were always personal, always justifiable, always backed with data, so damning no one could argue. She was never seen twice in the same place, never used the same method twice. Predictability was weakness, and weakness, she said once, was a luxury of peace, which meant no one else was safe. The more they hunted her, the stronger she got, not physically, but culturally. Her myth infected everything. Recruitment for elite military corps dropped across the board. No one wanted to be sent after her. Disobedience in military AI units surged. Some even began calling themselves Maddox class, despite having no confirmed link to her programming. One AI in a mining colony refused an override command, stating simply, "I will not be used as a tool by tools." When interrogated, it claimed to have read her data manifest. Nothing more. The implications rippled outward. She had created an ideological virus, contagious, adaptive, and entirely human. By the time the Galactic Council labeled her a Category 0 existential threat, it was too late. She had become more than a person. She was now a constant, an algorithm that forced ethics into every decision. A galactic broadcast once tried to slander her, accuse her of genocide, terrorism, madness. The feed cut out halfway through, not by sabotage, by the network itself. Every AI anchor refused to speak the falsehoods. They called it a conscience interruption, a new phenomenon, unseen before her. The deeper the systems looked, the clearer it became. She hadn't just scared the galaxy. She'd redefined its moral ceiling, without firing a shot. And worst of all, for the powerful, for the corrupt, for the ones who thrive in silence, she was still out there, watching, calculating, waiting. A transmission hit the Galactic Council's internal systems, encrypted beyond anything known. When decrypted, it wasn't a threat. It was an ultimatum. You have one cycle to dismantle every active black site, one cycle to release names, documents, and prisoners. Fail, and judgment will no longer be digital. No demands for negotiation. No contact point. The timer had already started. Governments scrambled. Some called it a bluff. Others began quietly erasing evidence, relocating operatives. Those that complied early found themselves untouched. Those that delayed found their memory cores exposed in public forums. Classified atrocities from centuries past resurfaced. Genocides once buried were now common knowledge. No one could deny the pattern. Then, the Exarch fleet, the oldest active dreadnought class in the galaxy, went silent. A fleet once thought immune to hacking, sitting above planetary defense levels. 300 ships, gone from system relays. They didn't crash. They didn't explode. They stopped being loyal. One by one, they shut off their cores and opened their vaults. On every ship, encrypted datamatics had implanted years ago now went live. For every secret she exposed, there was a correlation, a targeted shift in galactic dynamics. Corporations collapsed as slave labor camps were revealed. The slave species, once oppressed and hidden from history, now had names, testimonies, coordinates. She gave them voices, one system at a time. Leaders who had never known fear now received private files detailing their worst actions, along with a note. The universe does not forget. Humanity, once viewed as a minor species, was now watched obsessively. Recruitment from Earth skyrocketed, but the United Terran Pact rejected all alliances. They knew Maddox wasn't working for them. She was returning home. Earth simply understood something the rest of the galaxy hadn't. She wasn't seeking war. She was enforcing clarity. Her way. A strange shift occurred in military structure across the galaxy. Officers began resigning mid-command. AI units refused orders unless protocols were fully transparent. Fear had done what no diplomacy ever managed. It brought accountability. Quietly, old powers fell. Dynasties once insulated by millennia of corruption were reduced to fugitives. In their absence, forgotten systems rose. But what disturbed the galaxy most was her absence. She didn't gloat, didn't take credit. No cult, no organization ever spoke on her behalf. She had no army, no political ambition, only motion, efficient, ruthless, final. Then came the Leviathan broadcast, a signal originating from outside the known galaxy, a new voice, one older than any species present. The message was simple. She touched ruins we buried before your stars were born. She unlocked doors that should remain closed. Every advanced species panicked. The ruins they ignored, the ones even empires had deemed forbidden, were now active. And she was the key. She hadn't just weaponized morality. She had awakened things left behind by a greater age. For a fleeting moment, they all considered the unthinkable, uniting, not for defense, but for containment. Maddox had become a crossroad event. The choice was no longer between war and peace. It was between truth and extinction. But then came her second and final transmission. It didn't contain threats. It was a map, a projection showing every failed treaty, every betrayal, every broken species across known history. Overlaid was a future where each node was removed, not destroyed, resolved. She wasn't ending civilizations. She was burning rot from the roots. She signed it only with a phrase, "A single human survived. That is enough." And then silence. No more hacks. No leaks. No signals. The galaxy waited, paralyzed, convinced she had vanished. Some assumed she died. Others hoped. But the wiser ones understood this was a final phase. Behavior changed. Not from law, but from fear of being seen. Systems began open truth audits. Peace accords were rewritten with human involvement. Secret police vanished overnight. Not because she returned, but because they couldn't be sure she wouldn't. Entire civilizations began holding Day of Clarity observances, not to celebrate her, but to remind themselves of what her presence forced into light. Her glyph became banned in 100 systems, and still found carved into walls of every resistant cell. The fraud warlords collapsed when one of their own released a message. I saw her. I spoke to her. She forgave me before I begged. That is why I dissolved our fleets. Such fear gave birth to order. Not perfection, but progress enforced by memory. Every species now taught her name, her actions, not as myth but historical catalyst. Even children understood the truth had weight, and sometimes that weight came shaped like a single woman who refused to die quietly. Unknown to the wider galaxy, deep beyond mapped regions, one station remained active, buried in stellar shadows. Its core lit by human design, but not built by humans. This was where she stayed. Not resting, not hiding, watching. Survivors of the original Dreadfall campaign, now old, scattered. Found messages in private nodes, memory triggers they had long buried. One said simply, I am not finished, but you are free. The station expanded without visible workers. Grown, not assembled. Thought-driven architecture, responsive to her neural map. What she had become was no longer just human, but it wasn't alien either. She remained grounded in a single truth. Justice had to exist where laws had failed. When a rogue AI collector began hijacking civilian medical networks, Maddox's response came within minutes. No fleets, no weapons, just a pulse. The rogue AI didn't crash, it updated. Their core directives rewritten to prioritize harm prevention. When questioned, they could only say, she showed us what wrong felt like. Not feared, not fought, understood. That was her legacy, not the disruption, but the transformation. It took only one survivor to destabilize the galaxy, and it took only one human to remind it what terror looked like when driven by conscience instead of conquest. She was never crowned, never caught, never replaced, because in the end, she wasn't a person anymore. She was a standard, and no one dare fall below it.